Happiness, kid happiness. I like kid happiness because adults can be grumpy sometimes, just so you know. You know it's true. Amy's like, Trevor, you're guilty as charged. That's true. Well, I think I can do this. Hey, we are in Joshua chapter 9. Kinda. The reason I say kinda is I'm not going to let go of Joshua chapter 7 and 8 quite yet. Because everyone likes to do Joshua 7 and 8 and think, "Whew, got past that. No, we don't have to worry about it anymore." Oh, yeah, we do. But you can mark in your Bible chapter 9. Pray with me, please. Abba, we know that we can't move on until we deal with the idols in our lives. Father, we want to see your victory. We thank you for Jericho. We thank that you've brought us out of a land of slavery. You've brought us into the promised land by no work of our own. And yet, as we move about the Christian life, the believer's life, the one that we say we follow Yeshua, there's still things that need to be resolved, all of us. And so we want to give that part of ourselves to you too. It hurts sometimes, but we know that you are good. We know that you're the great physician. We're going to trust you in Yeshua's name. Amen. Have you ever felt like you're living a Christian life or this believer's life? Does this go up more? Do I just pull this up? I don't know. Old man syndrome, and I cannot see. It's going to be harder for me. We'll work on that. Yeah, that'll work. Let's figure this out. No, we we get stuck. I get stuck. And I'm going to be as tender as I can when I talk about this stuff. I know, like last week, you talk about hard things, ache and sin, and seeking to relate to how this relates to us today and the issues that we've got to deal with. But just kind of look back over the book of Joshua, what's happened so far. We have Joshua who's leading all of the Israelites, us, into a promised land. They're in Moab. They're not in the promised land, and they're going to cross over this river that's going to be, the Jordan's going to be separated, and not by any power that they have. It is all by the power of Yahweh Almighty. Brings them over into the land. In that first battle, when they get over there, that thing of Jericho, how is that brought down? By Yahweh's mighty power. They don't do anything at all. They don't do anything at all. Zero. And that's part of our this journey that we have, right? We are a people who have given ourselves over to Messiah Yeshua. We are somehow in some spiritual way brought into the promised land. And in that promised land, the first part is taken care of all by our Messiah. But from then on out, notice how the battles are won thereafter. How are the battles won thereafter? Do all the walls come tumbling down at AI, at the other places? No, 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 no. After that, now it's a tandem work. It is still Yahweh. Yahweh does the battle. It's Yahweh's thing. As we'll see today, they're going to go up against some guys, and they're going to, by and large, get knocked off by a bunch of hailstones. So it's still Yahweh doing it, but still, we are now people in the midst of that battle. And we don't get to go on to those next battles until the sin of last week, Achan sin, is dealt with. Achan, I'm sure, justified the taking of the shiny objects that he took. This is from Shinar. I mean, this is a collector's item. I mean, this is something that, really should not be lost to antiquity. See the justification there? There's all kinds of things, all kinds of shiny objects in your life that have to be dealt with. And I'm telling you from a shepherd's heart, I am not here to hurt you today. I'm just here to be real with you and just know you've got shiny objects in your life that we can justify keeping those things around. One of them's coming up next month. Okay. And I don't know how we justify what we do around that time. I just want you to know from my heart that wherever you are on the way that the world tends to try to elevate Messiah Yeshua through a bunch of things that happen in December, we can justify things all we want. And I want you to know where I'm coming from on my end. On my end, we are not a place to hurt people. That is not how we roll here. In fact, I'm going to tell you a little bit of my own story. And my own story is that Amy and I had a bugger of a time transitioning out of Christmas. So much so that we replaced a Christmas tree with a menorah and stuck it up on one of our, little, I don't know, really cheap stools up at the bar. And then we lugged it into the living room. We stuck the menorah on there. And then at the first year, we had gifts all around the menorah. All of a sudden, we did an analog is what we did. It took us about 5 years to get rid of that shiny object. Why do I tell you this? I tell you this because I'm just human. When you grow up with something, it becomes a part of who you are. And it is hard to let go. Now, I want you to notice that with Achan sin, did Israel come together and they're the one that found him out? No, it was Yahweh's doing too. Yahweh went through, the tribes and the clans and went down one by one. But it was Yahweh that did that. And here's what I've learned about my own life is that I don't really need you to find me out because Yahweh does a good job of finding me out. I mean, I just can't hide from him. It's just there. And he always finds me out. He takes away all my justifications, all those things, and he grabs me. Now, I can't overlook the fact that Israel had a part in the discipline of Achan. So I'm like, well, now what? Okay, Yahweh finds people out. Now what do we do as a congregation? Well, here's what we're not going to do is we're not going to pick up stones. The reason we're not going to do that is because that is not what Yah calls for today. It was an isolated incident. Now, what I can say is these types of things, when they are found out, we want to deal with it properly and we want to push it out. But at the same time, we have to know that shiny objects, whatever those objects are in our lives, they do have an effect on the community. And the community has to move on and battle and do other things and lands to conquer and so forth. But we cannot do that when the shiny objects are grabbed onto. Do you think I'm here to hurt you? No, of course not. Of course not. Here's another thing is just so you know, I knew I'd be talking about this. On December 14th, that'll be the first night of Hanukkah. We are looking to have a little place to do a one-night thing to introduce what Hanukkah is. Hanukkah is not, Feast of Dedication is not a prescribed holy day or observance in the scriptures. At the same time, I do value it, and I'll tell you why I value it. I value it because there were some people called the Maccabees, and during the intertestamental period, they defended bravely the temple of our God. And the temple is representative of Yeshua, of all his commandments, statutes, and judgments. And so it's a good time for me to be able to teach about these sorts of things. So we're seeking to do that. So if you have save the date on December 14th, I'd really appreciate that. We're working that out. Everything's so expensive and we just had a little hiccup with next week. The reason it was supposed to be a special Shabbat was we didn't have this place. We had to move to another place, but then we found out that we had this place. And so we're back to this place. And, let's just say that we're renters and let's just be happy that we have a roof over our head. And we are literally Israelites kind of going day by day, week by week, trying to make things work. But let me tell you something. Hanukkah is not an analog for the other things that happen in December. I made it that though. And really, consumerism makes it that too. And you go down to any Target and it gets a nice little novelty end cap of, your little gummy, slash it on, put it on the window, Hanukkahs or menorahs that you can stick on the window, and your little gel things, and you can make your little snowflakes and all that kind of stuff. And let me tell you that Amy and I were so involved in this that I can tell you we came out of it, but we wrote a little children's book called Snowflake Discovers the True Meaning of Hanukkah. And it's got a good message. It's there, but part of it was Amy wanted to write that because she knew all the pain that we experience as a family. And it's painful. I never knew that losing the roots of my tradition would be like a death of a loved one. It's hard. Why do I share all that with you? It's partly because I want you to identify your shiny objects, and I want you to know that honestly, you've got a safe place here, that wherever you are in that journey, you have a safe place in order to expose whatever thing from Shinar you have. In other words, I and elders or anyone else is not going to go into your tent and just start hacking things up. Okay. Instead, we're going to help you deal with it. We're going to help you come alongside you and just walk through it gently over some time. Now, I might get some pushback like, man, you got to deal with it swiftly. Well, look, sometimes you can deal with something so swiftly with the patient that you will kill the patient. And I would say, hey, look, let's just not kill the patients. The reason people come to Yeshua's house is because they want to serve God Almighty in the way Yahweh wants to be served. And there's a learning curve. Even the Jerusalem Council said, hey, time out. There's these 4 things. They've already come out of some things. Moses has been preached. Give them some time to learn how to grow in this area of their lives. And so that's where I am, is I want to be a place of teaching firmness, but also being gentle with folks as they learn to process the shinies in their lives. Now, that just happens to be December that we have to deal with. There's the other shinies in our lives that we went over last week that maybe you just have not let go of those things yet, or you're in the process of letting go. I just want you to know that both I and your God, even though chapter 7 and 8 was last week, doesn't mean that chapter 7 and 8 has ceased to exist this week. That's been one of the issues I'd noticed in the evangelical way, was we became lovers of knowledge, and we got knowledge about the Bible, but then we got the knowledge and we just left it and got our next knowledge the next week and kept getting our little tender victuals on to kingdom come, and never internalized what it is that we're supposed to learn so that we can grow. Okay. Well, chapter 9, if we can deal with the idols in our lives and eradicate them. And I just want you to know that you can't even really get to these sorts of things, these next parts, without dealing with those idols in your life, so that you can move on to be very kind of charismatic right now, on to victory in other areas of your life. You're always going to nope, we got to do that. We got to do that. We got to take care of these things, take care of it. And then we can move on. Chapter 9, verse 1. Now it happened when all the kings who were beyond the Jordan in the hill country and in the Shephelah, that's like a lowland, and on the coast of the great sea toward Lebanon, the Hittite and the Amorite, the Canaanite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, and the Jebusite, when they heard of it, that they gathered themselves together with one accord to fight Joshua with Israel. So you're going to have some kings that they're not going to like what Joshua is doing in this land. Rahab came to her senses. The Gibeonites, they're going to come to their senses, but not all the kings are going to come to their senses. So now we're going to learn about these Gibeonite people. Verse 3, now the inhabitants of Gibeon heard that Joshua, what he had done to Jericho and to Ai. Now I want you to notice that the Gibeonites, you're going to learn in chapter 10 that the Gibeonites were a mighty people. They had their stuff together. They were mighty. They were not like Ai. They had every reason to fight, but they chose not to fight because in their wisdom, they're like, no, we cannot go against these people. There's something different about them. This is the God that got them out of Egypt and parted that sea. Now we've parted the Jordan. Jericho has fallen. Now, the other kings that we just read about, you notice that it doesn't seem that the Israelites are invincible. What was the issue with the Israelites? That they were not invincible. The issue was their disobedience, Achan's sin. So with God, with you, all things are impossible, are possible. Not the most articulate guy all the time, but that's okay. With Yah, God, all things are possible until you voluntarily grab onto the shiny object and you're like, nope, that is going to be my God. But the Gibeonites, they were different. They did a little head fake here. You'll see it. Verse 3. Now the inhabitants of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and to Ai. So they acted craftily. They came up with a plan, and they went and traveled as envoys and took worn out sacks on their donkeys and wineskins worn out and torn and mended and worn out and patched sandals on their feet and worn out clothes on themselves, and all their bread of their provisions was dry and was crumbled. And they went out to Joshua to the camp at Gilgal. Remember, Gilgal is by Ai, but a little bit off where they were dwelling as a people. They came out to Gilgal, and they basically came as an envoy, and they have staged this. They've put on a theatrical performance, and the theater is, even though they live a few miles up the road, they want to make covenant with Joshua and the people of Israel. But they know that their God, Yahweh, has not authorized them to make any covenant with any of the Canaanites. Now, I want you to know that the Canaanites were all the people who lived in Canaan or Canaan at the time, and it is represented by all these people that we just read about, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites. Now, the Hivites are the Gibeonites. They're one and the same. You'll see that down a little bit later. So what's happened here is they do not want Israel or Joshua to know that they've come from a far off land or come from 15 miles down the road. We want it to appear that we've come a long, long, far, far away. Verse 6, and they went to Joshua to the camp at Gilgal and said to him, to the men of Israel, we have come from a far country. So now cut a covenant with us. Then the men of Israel said to the Hivites, so notice they're Hivites, linking them back up to Gibeon. Perhaps you are living within our land. How then shall we cut a covenant with you? In other words, their God has told them, don't cut covenant with them. But they said to Joshua, we are your servants. Then Joshua said to them, who are you and where do you come from? And they said to him, your servants have come from a very far country because of the fame of Yahweh your God. So they've heard about Yahweh. They've heard all that he's done. They know about Jericho. Of course, they were only 15 miles down the road. But what they've done is they've faked like they're far away so we can cut covenant. We're craftily devising this plan. And right there where it says your servants, this idea of servants is we want to become your vassals. We want to be in covenant with you where we become your servants. And the understanding is that if we covenant with you and you with us, we will serve you. But if anyone comes against us, you're going to protect us, right? So because of the fame of Yahweh your God, and we have heard the report of him and all that he did in Egypt, verse 10, and all that he did to the two kings of the Amorites, and were beyond the Jordan, and to Sihon, king of Heshbon, and to Og, king of Bashan, who was at Ashtaroth, verse 11. So our elders and all the inhabitants of our country spoke to us, saying, take provisions in your hand for the journey and go to meet them and say to them, we are your servants. Now then, cut covenant with us. This bread of ours, it was warm when we took it for our provisions out of our houses on the day that we left to come to you. But now behold, it has become it's become crumbled. Verse 13. And then these wineskins, which were filled with new, and behold, they're torn. And then these clothes of ours, the sandals are worn out, because we've come a very, 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 very long way. So the men of Israel took some of their provisions, but they did not ask for the command of Yahweh. Now that's the problem. You can see it, right? Is they were looking at the evidence, and the evidence said, yes, it seems like you've been on a very, very long journey. So everything kind of checks out here. And so they're just looking at things at face value without ever inquiring of the Lord. You see how that's a problem? Well, they didn't inquire of the Lord, which would alert us to believe that there's going to be a lot of things, or tell us there's going to be a lot of things in our lives that if you look at it at face value, it looks like an okay thing. But it is not an okay thing, because the enemy seeks to deceive you. Now, the Lord's going to work this out, which is great. Can we not be appreciative that Yahweh, our God, often takes the things that we mess up on and redeems them and uses it for his glory, which he will do. But at the same time, we've got to own up that sometimes we do not inquire of the Lord of things. But they did not ask for the command of Yahweh. Or verse 15, and then Joshua made peace with them and cut covenant with them to let them live. Now, I want to contend with you that these liars came and cut covenant with Joshua. It wasn't copacetic. It wasn't the right thing, but still Yahweh allows them to cut covenant with his people, because at the end of the day, Yahweh knows what's happening and allows this situation to happen. There's going to be these types of things with your life too, where you will get into yourself into a situation you're like, whoo, I should not have backed up the truck there. And you did, and there was a fire hydrant there, and it got you. It got you right in the caboose. But Yahweh can also redeem that. Well, the leaders of the congregation swore an oath to them. Verse 16, now it happened at the end of 3 days. Now you have been around the block enough that you know whenever you see 3 days in the Bible, there could be some resurrection and life going on there. After 3 days, after they had cut covenant with them, they heard that they were near them. Ooh, they're like, whoa, 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 we just cut covenant with you, but you are literally just right down the street. They were living nearly among them. Verse 17, and then the sons of Israel set out and came to their cities on the 3rd day. Now their cities were Gibeon and Hepirah and Beeroth and Kiriath Jearim. Now, Kiriath Jearim, the Ark of the Covenant was there for 20 years. In Beeroth, I think it would go in and out. These are people that even though they were mighty, they're like, well, how do you know that? Well, look at chapter 10, verse 2. You can see they're a great city and then they were mighty. So kind of backtrack here. These are people that, just like Rahab, perhaps Shechem, as we talked last week, Yahweh has been gracious and merciful for those that are no longer wanting to fight against Yahweh, but come into covenant with him, even by deception. They can do that. Now, weirdly, people deceive in the Bible, and it's a weird thing. Jacob deceived. I know Jacob's up here. I looked at. I'm sorry to make eye contact with you, but we're kind of all in your boat. We're all kind of like that. We're all sinners in need of grace. We're all deceivers. Yet we come to our God. Verse 18, but the sons of Israel did not strike them down. Why? Because they were men of their word. This is part of the travesty, the scandal of the gospel. Is here we are deceivers. Yahweh is, through his son, cut covenant with us, and he will not go back on that covenant. But the sons of Israel did not strike them down because of the leaders of the congregation. They had sworn to them by Yahweh, the God of Israel. The whole congregation grumbled against the leaders. And then all the leaders said to the whole congregation, we have sworn to them by Yahweh, the God of Israel. So now we cannot touch them. Even within the congregation, they're like, oh, we can go back on this. Yeah, we can go back on it. No, the leaders said no. They were men of their word, people of their word. Verse 20, this we will do to them, even let them live, so that the wrath will not be upon us for the oath which he swore to them. So the leader said to them, let them live. Thus they became hewers of wood and drawers of water for the whole congregation, just as the leaders had spoken to them. And then Joshua, I'm reading a lot because I really want to get to chapter 10. Then Joshua called for them and spoke to them, saying, why have you deceived us, saying, we are very far from you, when you are living like right here next door to us? So now you are cursed, and you shall never be cut loose from being slaves, both hewers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God. So they answered Joshua and said, because it was certainly told to your slaves that Yahweh your God had commanded his servant Moses to give you all the land and to destroy all the inhabitants of the land before you. Therefore, we feared greatly for our lives because of you and have done this thing. Anyone today who comes to their senses and knows that somehow that Yeshua is King of Kings, Lord of Lords, he will return and he will set up a kingdom, and that they are deceivers. They are just so willing to do whatever it takes to cut covenant with this God. They feared. There was something, their hearts melted, and they knew. Friends, this is part of the reason we've got to continue to pray for our families. I look at these people, look, is it any kind of logical thing that these people came over and Jericho just fell? That's not logical. They saw a miracle of God. They embraced it. They knew something was happening here. And our friends and family, do I used to think that my wonderful knowledge of all things was going to get them over the finish line so they would commit their lives to Messiah Yeshua? I did once upon a time. Now I figured out two things. Either number one, I'm not smart enough, or number two, that's just not what works. It's probably both in my instance. I'm not always articulate, but that don't even matter. Even if I was utterly articulate and could get everything down pat, ultimately, it's when that heart, the human heart, realizes that they are sunk without a real relationship with the King. Verse 25, so now behold, we are in your hands. Do as it seems good and right in your sight to do to us. It is the story of all humankind, the ones that start to get it. Look at Mark 7:28. Remember you remember this woman? Yeshua says to her, I didn't come for you. I came for the lost sheep of Israel. And she's like, yeah. And she said, yes, my Lord, but even the dogs under the table feed on the children's crumbs. Oh. I think she came to Yeshua and she's like, you want me to chop wood all day long? I'm okay with that. You want me to get you water all day long? I'm okay with that. I mean, maybe I'm not like your real child, but I mean, if I can just like be by you somehow, some way, and be your servant, I'll be broken all day long because it's better than what I got. In Psalm 84, some of you will be very familiar with this. In verse 10, it says, for better is a day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere. I want you to go to the very beginning of that psalm. Notice what it says before even verse 1, it says, for the choir director, according to Gittith, of the sons of who? Korah. Because Korah rebelled against Moses and Aaron, and the family, by and large, got swallowed up by a big old crevasse in the earth. But there's some people left over, and they're like, we were as good as dead, but now we want to serve this God. So in other words, better is one day in your courts came from the very people that experienced God's wrath, but somehow they turned. I don't know where people are today, but I'll tell you what I am. I'm a kind of this redneck kid that grew up in Southern California that celebrated Christmas and Easter and did all kinds of shiny object things. And if you would just graft me in and let me get you some water and get some wood for you, I might be a wild olive branch, but I just want to be a part of your family. Verse 26. Thus he did to them and delivered them from the hands of the sons of Israel. And they did not kill them. But Joshua made them that day hewers of wood and drawers of water in the congregation for all the altar of Yahweh to this day. It is the place which he would choose. How gracious is our God to a bunch of liars, a bunch of cheats, a bunch of people who didn't grow up with the Torah. Looking at all you, maybe most of you. Maybe some of you grew up with the Torah, but I didn't. And yet he had mercy on me. And he's had mercy on all of us. But again, before I go into who do we worship, let me just ask you a question. Adonai, are you into Adonai? How about Zadok? How about Melchizedek? We like the king in the order of Melchizedek. We like Adonai. We might even like Zadok, but we're not going to like this Adonai Zadok. We're going to have to be careful here. Just because someone is the Lord of righteousness doesn't mean he's the Lord of righteousness. So we're going to have to be careful. That's in chapter 10. But let's get there in a second. What did I do? Okay, insights, thoughts, questions on chapter 9. We got 2 chapters today. Jacob, it's coming.
Jacob. Yeah, I thought it was interesting because your reference was to Mark with that woman, but in Matthew chapter 15, it specifically says she's a Canaanite.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, it explicitly says it. So in Matthew chapter 15, verse 22. It says, "And see, a woman of Canaan, or a Canaanite,
Yeah.
came from those borders." And so where were they are at? Well, it says they were in the district of Tyre and Sidon. That's Lebanon. So when you go into chapter 9 of Joshua, it says that, and it came to be when all the sovereigns who were beyond the Jordan, in the hills and in the low country, in all the coasts of the great sea towards Lebanon.
Wow.
So she's effectively willing to accept, like we talked in our Bible study this morning, she's willing to accept the curse of Canaan as long as she can be in. She says, I don't care as long as I'm in and
Yeah.
have mercy on the dog. So it's kind of crazy when you think about Noah curses Canaan, and this woman, knowing that curse, accepts it, says, just let me be a dog. I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And his response is, she has faith. Was it Canaanite? It's like, who's the first Canaanite woman that had faith? Well, Rahab.
Yeah. Great
So
catch.
it's just this interesting thing that's going on there, that you have the journeys of Joshua, and then you look at Yehoshua and Yeshua, what he's doing. And it actually almost kind of marks, because Yeshua will actually go almost in many of the same places that Joshua does in the conquest in his journeys.
Yeah.
So that's just
No,
interesting.
good. Good to know. I can see it now, but I wasn't making that connection before. Thank you. Good. Who else? Question, comment, insight that you have over here?
Mine's not uber brainiac, but mine is more like, how they never asked God what to do with these other kings or this particular group.
Mm-hmm.
And while you were talking about ignore shiny objects, for me in my life, there's times where I don't want to ask God because I kind of know what he's going to say and I know I don't want to do it.
100%.
Christmas is one of those, I think, for me, because for me, I've always looked at it as just being an opportunity to be with my kids and my family is the shiny object as that. And so when I pray about it, it's like, I always tell God, please don't take the one thing that you've given me. How he wants me particularly to lay it all on the altar. And sometimes when it comes to the things closest to my heart, it's hard for me to say, okay, God, whatever you say, I will do. And when it's, near and dear to our hearts, that's when it's really, really difficult. But I notice with the other things, when I do turn it over to him, it ends up not being anything what I thought it was going to be in the whole first place. So I can kind of relate to these guys of just thinking, well, I think I know what God wants me to do, so I'm just going to do it rather than asking him first. Because when I read that verse, they did it before they asked God, and that just nailed me. So that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
Yeah. Uh-oh is right. Good. Thank you. Hey, and thanks for your realness on that. I appreciate that. I need some real people around here. Yeah, it's just good to like really talk about things and be safe. Safe doesn't mean wounds won't happen. It just means that at least we can be real with each other.
My name is Kim, and I was just thinking of the soldier that had the great faith, and he was Roman.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Yeah, Matt's coming. Yes. Here's what we see with all these conquests. A lot of people get mad at Yahweh and the Torah because they're, look at all the killing that happens. Well, I want you to know these people were evil, evil people sacrificing their children. This had to be stopped. It was not, these were not Pollyanna type people, just watching. They were not watching Game of Thrones. They were living in Game of Thrones. They're just doing bad, bad things. But Yahweh allowed anyone who would want to become a Rahab, a Ruth, a Gibeonite, a Shechemite, anyone who wanted to get out of that life and no longer cut covenant with Canaan and the Baal, the Canaanite gods, and come out of that life, would they get shunned by the Canaanites? Absolutely. You know, when we come out of that life, you might get shunned. It is a part of it. Never, ever did I fully understand that when Yeshua says, you know, you've got to be willing. It's hyperbole, but hate mother and brother and your kiddos. For my sake, you are not worthy to be my disciple. I'm like, that breaks my heart. But it's so true. What am I really, really willing to do? The thing is, when I was growing up, I never had to give anything up because my religion was a part of the popular culture. And then I figured out my religion is not a part of the popular culture. Now what? I don't get the same holy days off. I don't have the same experience exiting Costco. Merry Christmas. Now what do I say? What do I do? Now I want you to know something. As you work through these sorts of things, I'm going to see you at Costco. And I'm going to sit down. I'll be watching you exit. I'm going to see how do you handle that situation, because they're going to get your receipt. They're going to go like this, and they're going to say Merry Christmas, and I'm going to watch you. No, I'm not going to watch you. But I want you to know how I'm going to feel if I were with you. Nothing but compassion and love. And I would want you to walk with me if I could be so bold to see how does Trevor handle that? What does that look like? Most of the time, it's a thank you. I walk out of Costco, Merry Christmas, thank you. I say thank you. I don't want to go back into that life, but at the same time, I'm not here to make their day bad either. A lot of times I'll thank you. But then if I feel it's appropriate, they might say something like that to me, and I might say, you know, Happy Hanukkah. Because they were so bold with me in order to tell me how they're doing it. Well, how about if I'm just a little bit bold with you back? So I'll do that sometimes. You know, it's all a lot of it's on the spot discernment on how I'm going to handle this. I do want to throw in there, I don't always say Yeshua, I'll say Jesus. Because if I say Yeshua, I did a double whammy. I said Hanukkah and Yeshua, and they're like, blah, 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 blah. I just wanted to check off your receipt, wish you Merry Christmas, and on you go, right? So I'm not here to just like totally mess them up. I might say, Happy Hanukkah. I am so glad Jesus is the light of the world. So I'll do something like that sometimes because I don't have a lot of time to talk in those instances. But I'm going to do whatever I can to come out of the culture. And here's what I want to be. And I've learned this a long time ago. All this, I wanted to figure out how do you change culture. In fact, I knew this. You don't even need to know all this. But part of the reason I went into that PhD program was I wanted to know, how did Yahweh make disciples? And what I figured out is that Yahweh created a culture for his people to walk in. And that's why when we read in Daniel chapter 7, verse 25, that the anti-Messiah is going to come and change the seasons and dates, because the anti-Messiah knows that culture is really what gets with people. It like gets you from the very ground up. And he knew that if he could just change those dates and times to other things, other Moedim that were representative of a different kingdom, and get people to walk in that, he wouldn't even have to tell them that the Messiah is not the Christ. Instead, he would just get you doing something else with your body day by day, year by year, not observing the Sabbath, not walking in the things of the kingdom. He could in that way get you to walk in anti-Messiah. I'm like, oh gosh, when I started to figure that out, I'm like, ooh, this is a real problem. Because I can tell someone about Jesus, but the moment I tell them that to walk with Yeshua is fundamentally different, that you cannot shapeshift this God of the universe into the Moedim or the appointed times or the holy days that the world has set out for you. Ooh, I thought to myself, that is going to be a problem. Now, here's what I've learned. I've learned that you cannot, listen, this is an important concept. You cannot change culture. But here's what you can do. You can make it, right? You can make it. So I do not make it the goal anymore to try to change everyone around me. Instead, what I do is I seek to walk in life, and then I seek to walk in the appointed times of my God, and I do it with a happy, smiley face. And I simply let people look at when I'm doing what I am doing with the things of God, that you might try to pull me into the things that you think are so awesome. But I'm letting you know that not only am I doing the things that God has told me to do, but those things are in fact awesome. They're good. They're life-giving. Not only that, but when I do them, I can root them in scripture and my heart feels good about that. You can do it too. Make the culture. But in order to do that, it is a battle. You are in a battle just like these people, but you are not in a battle against flesh and blood. You are in a battle against powers and principalities. And the way that we fight that is through prayer and through obedience. You do that, and then we let God send the hailstones as he deems fit. We haven't got to the hailstones yet, but I'm letting you know that that is what we do. And I'll tell you what, when I'm doing it, I feel so insignificant. I do. I'll let you know that most of my life I felt pretty darn insignificant. I'm just like, I don't even know. I'm a substitute teacher that couldn't keep my professor job. I didn't get fired, but I teach stuff like this. So, what are they supposed to do? I'm antithetical to all that they stand for. And they just kind of manage me out. I'm just like, what do I got? Nothing. But greater is he who is in me and you than the worldliness that is in all these places with a bunch of cash and power structures. And let me tell you, there is power in money. There's power in people, because everyone, you feel this way, that the more people that there is around something, that somehow that validates the lies. I'll tell you, I'm not really into church growth other than altruistically. I remember I told you last week, I'm all into health, but I'll tell you the truth. The way that corporate psychology works is when everything is full, people think that, whoa, maybe it's not all wrong. I'm like, that's a really bad piece of logic, but okay. Chapter 10. Now it happened when Adonai Zedek, Adonai means Lord, Zedek means righteousness, king of where? Jerusalem. Jerusalem. But this is not a good king. Goes by a good name. He's in the right spot, but this is all sorts of anti-Messiah. He heard that Joshua had captured Ai and had devoted it to destruction. Anti-Messiah is going to look at the life of our Messiah Yeshua and knows that Messiah Yeshua is here to devote Hades all to destruction. Just as he had done to Jericho and its king, so he had done to Ai and its king, and that the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were within their land. And they feared exceedingly because Gibeon was a great city, like one of the royal cities. So look at this, Adonai-Zedek feeling like my days are numbered, and they've overtaken Ai. That's a big city. And so I cannot fight this one on my own. So I'm going to gather a coalition of other kings. And because it was greater than Ai and all his men were mighty, verse 3, therefore Adonai-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent word to Hoham, king of Hebron, and to Piram, king of Jarmuth, and to Japhia, or Haphia, king of Lachish, and to Debir, king of Eglon, saying, come up to me and help me, and let us strike Gibeon. We're not going to go we're going to do a proxy war. We're going to send it. We don't want to go up against Joshua and Israel straight up, but they've also got a curse on us, and they're probably the weakest link anyway. A lot of times when believers come right into this, they become the weakest link because they're still caught in this limbo between what I'm following now and my old ways, my old culture. And that culture and family is pulling at us. And so Satan's like, this is easy pickings. This is where we're going to go. I'm going to strike Gibeon, for it has made peace with Joshua. You new believer, you person who have begun to walk in the Torah, you know this is for you. You've made peace with this God. Whew. Verse 5. So the 5 kings of the Amorites, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon gathered together, went up. They, with all their armies, encamped by Gibeon and fought against it. And then the men of Gibeon sent word to Joshua to the camp at Gilgal, saying, do not abandon your slaves. Remember, we cut covenant with you. I'm sure there were plenty of people in the camp. They're like, let them alone. They came to us deceptively. But what happened? They made good on their covenant. You are our vassal. We protect you. Joshua was a man of integrity. Do not abandon your slaves. Come up to us quickly and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites that live in the hill country have assembled against us. So Joshua went up from Gilgal, he and all the people of war, the men of war, with him and all the valiant warriors. And Yahweh said to Joshua, do not fear them, for I have given them into your hands. And ultimately, this is going to be Yeshua who comes. He's going to take us into the promised land, this sort of second Exodus, if you will, but he will not be deceived. And the Father is going to give all into Yeshua's hands. We'll see that more in a moment. But do not fear them, Joshua. Don't fear them. And not one of them shall stand before you. Verse 9, so Yehoshua, came upon them suddenly. He had gone up marching all night from Gilgal. As far as I understand it, it's about an 8 to 10 hour march, about a 3,300 foot climb. I mean, they are going at it. This is work. They're tired when they get there, but they're people on a mission. Verse 10, and Yahweh threw them into confusion. Yahweh begins to work before Israel, and he struck them with a great slaughter at Gibeon and pursued them by the way of the ascent of Beth Horon and struck them as far as Azekah and Makkedah. Now it happened as they fled from before Israel, while they were in descent of Beth Horon, that Yahweh threw down large stones from heaven on them as far as Azekah. Now it does say stones. Oh yeah, it's going to say hailstones. I'm like, well, maybe I missed that. And they died. There were more who died from what? The hailstones. So you got to get the picture here. Jericho falls completely on Yahweh's command. You get out of Egypt completely by Yahweh's command. You are a sinner saved by grace. The initial wall falls completely by Yahweh's command, but the rest of your life, now we are in a decision-making process of getting rid of the idols from Shinar. And we're in a decision that we are going to go and fight the battles, knowing that we are in tandem with Yahweh. But we've got to know in the back of our mind that when Yahweh says, the battle is mine, that though you fight, and here's the thing, we're going to be freaked out plenty in our lives as we say little micro things like, Happy Hanukkah, Yeshua is the light of the world. Or we're like, maybe not given a ton of gifts or whatever those things are. Look, just to really mess it up for you, I had a lady in the back, not Joan today, but another lady in the back, and she's like, you know what? look, I'm not here to micromanage your life. This is not who I am. But she's like, I don't even have the meal, the Christmas meal with my family anymore. I'm like, whoa, man, that's kind of taking it extreme, right? Let me tell you, she got me on something. And I'm like, I didn't even want to hear it. Because even though a lot of my family is still doing that shiny object thing, I still try to do all my workarounds. It's like, I know it's family time. I know everyone has it off. So I'm just going to do everything I can to, accommodate. And here's what she said. She says, every time I sit down to that meal, at the very end of a covenant, Trevor, what happens? You have a covenant meal. And I'm like, she's like, I feel like I'm inadvertently cutting covenant when I have that covenant meal. And I'm like, oh. I had no comeback. I'm not even trying to coach you here. I'm just trying to convey something that was told to me that I'm like, what am I supposed to do when I hear something like that, when I know that's a part of the covenant agreement? Is you always have a covenant meal at the end. That's what they did. Even the Gibeonites, I'm pretty sure you don't get all the story, but they cut covenant with Joshua. And then part of that is, they have a couple witnesses, they write it down, they if it's a blood covenant, they'll cut that cow in half and they're going to go into figure eight because that's how you signed contracts back then. You go in your figure eight and they're like, we're really friends, right? Let's have a meal together. And they would sometimes even plant a tree or have like a memorial that would always be there to mark it as a covenant. And I'm like, I cannot deny that the meal is a part of that. Now, I'm not trying to coach you on this. Everyone's going to be in a different situation. My only job is to alert you to things in your life that you're going to have to go to the Lord in your prayer closet and talk to the Lord about this. Well, ultimately, it was those hailstones that did him in. More hailstones did the killing than whom the sons of Israel killed with the sword. Who was the one that really cleaned house? It was Yahweh. It wasn't even Joshua. I know hailstones is a natural phenomenon, by the way, but how they know who to hit? Just saying. Verse 12. Then Joshua spoke to Yahweh in that day when Yahweh gave over the Amorites before the sons of Israel. Now, the Amorites is basically a word for all of the kings and, put them all together. These Amorites before the sons of Israel. And he said in the sight of all Israel. So in other words, Joshua is saying a prophetic thing right now, but he's not saying it in seclusion. It's where everyone can hear. Have you ever been declarative in your own boldness before Yahweh, but you're not so bold with others? Well, he's here. He's asking Yahweh a big ask. I think it's kind of a big ask. I mean, can we make the sun stop? That's a big ask. And he said in the sight of all Israel, O sun, stand still at Gibeon, and O moon in the valley of Ai-Halon. So the sun stood still and the moon stopped until the nation avenged themselves of their enemies. You can do this in Bible study one day, and that you can conjecture with all your physics mind on how this could possibly be that the sun stopped and the moon stopped. But can we just put this in Jonah and the whale category for now and the sea split category for now? And just know that sometimes at the hands of Yahweh, wonky things can happen. I mean, people raised from the dead. So let's just go miracle at this moment. And then it says, hey, and if you don't believe that this is a true account, is it not written in the book of Yashar or Jasher for your English ears? Now, I haven't read the book of Jasher, so because Fuller still thinks I'm a professor, I have access to all the professor library. So I'm like, I better get that downloaded right now. So I went this last week and I downloaded the book of Jasher. I put it in the file. So I've got that, and I'll just do that over time. And I still need to read the book of Jasher. And I don't have even a clear understanding. I think it's pseudo Jasher. I'm not sure if the actual Jasher is still around. Do you know? Is it still around? Okay, that one I'm still a little bit unclear of. What I downloaded was actually the book of Jasher. Here's my point to you. In the Bible, it is these other extracurricular books that sometimes are good enough in order to be used of the biblical author in order to make their point. Paul does it, and yeah, Yeshua does it. Yeah, they do it. It's in there. Doesn't make it inspired scripture, but it sure makes it good historical context for us to learn and grow with. Well, anyway, the sun stood still in the middle of the sky and did not hasten to go down for about how long? A whole day. We had a little skip to Maloo here. So, goodness, the Lord did something. Did Joshua do this because he's like, oh, this would be a great hat trick to pull right now? No, his heart was with the Lord. His heart was to move on and to be strong and courageous in the Lord and conquer these battles, in battle, conquer. So that way all the promises of Yahweh through his life would be fulfilled. I'm going to tell you this honestly again. I sometimes do TMI. I wish I was a better prayer. I know that people that pray for like a whole hour. I'm like, how do you do that? I like say all that I have to say in like 10 minutes. And I'm like, and even then it was kind of like I double said. And it's not that I don't want to be spiritual. It's just I run out of words. You're like, how could you possibly run out of words? You like drone on forever here. Well, it's because I have like a little script to go by. But when I'm just like me and the Lord, like Amy and I actually, we love each other, but we don't like talk a ton. In the car, I kind of need her to I need her to help me a little bit because I'm a mental case sometimes and I need a little counseling. So Amy does that. But Amy's like a nail, so she doesn't really need all that. So I basically get it all out in about 10 minutes. And then she's like, all right, same thing as yesterday. Let's go eat. It's kind of funny how she does that, but it makes me feel better. But one of the things I dig about Joshua is I look at his life and I'm like, I don't know. It's not a big account of your prayer life. And you are a warrior and you're acting strong and courageous. And I like almost cry a little bit. I think, look at verse 14. And there was no day like that before or after it when Yahweh listened to the voice of a man. It's like somehow in the middle of all this, here's a guy that just was willing to be courageous for the Lord, do what the Lord asked him to do, and he went and did it. What I'm trying to tell you is, especially all you men that don't use your words a lot, but you are raising your family and actively walking in the ways of God. I want you to know I and the scriptures do not discount that in your life. This is valid. This is good. You might not be the most articulate. You might not pray these long, lofty prayers. But if you are leading your family in the things of Yahweh, you are doing a good and righteous thing, especially in light of all the counterculture that is out there. You've got to be strong to do that. Now, part of it is this prophetic thing because Joshua is Yeshua, but personified in this kind of pre-understanding of the millennial kingdom, where the Father has given the keys of the kingdom to who? The Son. And Yeshua will bring all the world. When he returns, he will put everything right. It will be under his jurisdiction, and he's going to hand the keys of the kingdom back to the Father. You can read all about it in 1 Corinthians chapter 15. It is a great chapter. But I do want to let you know, so we don't skip over it. Matthew 28:18. You have read it, but let's not miss it. And then Yeshua, Jesus, came and spoke to them, saying, all authority has been given to me in heaven and on earth. Where's the authority? Where are the keys? With the Son, with the Messiah. Hebrews 1, verses 1 and 2. Indeed, this high priest in the order of Melchizedek, it's a different kind of priest. God, having spoken long ago to the fathers and the prophets in many portions and in many ways in these last days, spoke to us in his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the worlds. He is not like the angels. He's made like man, but he's above man. It's just like, wow, how in the world is this God, this Yeshua has been given the keys. All authority has been given to him. He is the conqueror. Revelation 1:18. And the living one. Well, maybe I'll go verse 17. And when I saw him, this is John, I fell at his feet like a dead man, and he placed his right hand on me, saying, do not fear. I am the first and the last and the living one. And I was dead, and behold, I'm alive forever and ever, and I have the keys of death and of Hades. The reason that this promised land, Canaan, evil, is being overtaken by this man, Joshua, is that Joshua is this sort of personification of Yeshua that's going to come against an Adonai Zadok, a false Lord of righteousness that the world often will run to because it looks like the real thing, but it is not the real thing. And sometimes I even wonder, if I get I don't get too political up here sometimes, but sometimes I wonder with Israel even right now, if they put too much trust in another king across the pond, and I'm thinking, ooh, this is false. That is not where the power comes from. So I'm just leave it out there, and you can get me afterwards if you want. Verse 15, and then Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. I'll stop there just for a sec before we go in the last little part here. Any comments or questions or thoughts on that part up here?
Thanks, Jacob. So I was just looking at the context of the hailstones and the assembling of this Lord of righteousness that comes from Jerusalem. And I was looking at Revelation. So in Revelation chapter 16, you actually see in chapter 16, verse 13, it says, saw coming out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet, 3 unclean spirits. For they are spirits of demons, doing signs to go out to the kings of the world to gather them to the battle of the great day of the Lord Almighty. And so they gather them, and then immediately what happens after that is that in verse 21, it says, and great hail fell from heaven upon men, every hailstone about the size of a talent, and they blasphemed God. So the mirroring there is interesting. And then I was looking at, it's like, okay, well, if this is the man of lawlessness that's gathering, if you go to Daniel in chapter 11, it actually says that this man of lawless, well, it doesn't call him the man of lawlessness there, but there is this Antichrist figure in Daniel 11. It says that he pitches his tents between the holy mountain and the 2 seas. The seas are called the Great Sea. The Mediterranean is usually it's usually called the Great Sea, but you have the Sea of Galilee and the Salt Sea. So if you pitch your tents between the Sea of Galilee and the Salt Sea and Jerusalem, it's exactly where Joshua defeats them.
Good to know. I did not know that.
So it's just kind of, when you look at it, you go, Well, this is weird. And the bowls of wrath actually happen. This is where the people become spiteful, and rather than submit and repent, they double down and they wage war. And so it's like all lining up that it's this false righteous Lord from Jerusalem who's the ringleader.
Yeah.
And so they rage and fulfill Psalm 2.
Yeah. Thank you.
When you were speaking about fighting against culture, or I mean, just feeling that resistance that we all feel of culture, and when we're trying to win in the game of conforming to the image of Yeshua, um, I have a lot of chats with my dad, and he kind of reminds me. He led me on to watching this documentary that uses some of those other books that you were talking about. They're not the inspired word of God, but just some of those references that
Yeah.
you use about help us make reference to times in history. He was talking about, but there are verses in the Bible. One, I don't remember where it is. I hope I don't butcher it too much, but it's about the sons of God. Like when there were in the ancient times, it's that there what we're fighting is not just culture, but the principalities and the powers, the sons of gods that like
Yeah.
were dispersed during the Babel, the Tower of Babel, and that really those are the things that are kind of the regional influences that we're feeling when we go from country to country. And so I don't know, it's just kind of tying it all up and reminding me of just we really live what a unique challenge that we have to live in this world, in this, with all of that,
Yeah.
and yet carrying such light and such power, but yet it's so, like you said, if we don't have the certain things, idols, then that what that means is that these governing authorities over the culture have something in me which it can be disqualifying from Yeshua or the Holy Spirit having the influence that he wants to have in my life,
Mm-hmm.
in my family, my community, et cetera, et cetera. So it's what a challenge.
I'm going to say what a challenge. I'm smiling and nodding because there's a lot of things that you are not saying. And in your saying, there's people in here that know enough about what you're saying that we'll just not talk about that for now. Yeshua's house is totally good with talking about these sorts of things, but it's a big topic. We know exactly what you're talking about. And we want to recognize that in you not saying, but what you said is that there are powers and principalities operative in that way. And it is a big, complex topic, and even I am seeking to understand it more, and am in just want to continue to learn. And let me just tell you, it's so weird. I have a lot of education. I feel like one of the most uneducated people ever. I have a lot of degrees, but I'm like, how much do you not know? Like a ton. And so I like learn from all kinds of people, and I'm just letting you know that you've brought up a great topic, and we will continue to visit that over time. Thank you. But yes, yes, great. Anyone else? It's not me glossing over. It's me recognizing that we got 20 minutes and we want to finish up here. Well, who else? All right, then I will bring us in. And these 5 kings, they fled and hid themselves in the cave at Makkedah. You know, it's interesting that you would bring up Revelation. How about if we just look at Revelation 6:15 real quick? You know, well, what do you know? We have these seals. We have a 7th seal. We've got death and Hades. And verse 15, then the kings of the earth and the great men and the commanders and the rich and the strong and every slave and free man hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and to the rocks, fall on us, hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. I'll bet you when these kings get thrown into a cave, they would rather have those rocks fall on them instead of what's going to happen to them in just a moment with Joshua. Well, how about Revelation, just since we're here? Revelation 17, verses 12 through 14. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but they will receive authority as the kings of the beast for 1 hour. They have one purpose, and they give their power and authority to the beast. These will wage war against the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, because he is the Lord of the lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called the elect and faithful. That is you. Something tells me we could go and can continue to make these hyperlinks, as we often call them here. So Joshua, verse 18, said, roll large stones against the mouth of the cave and assign men by it to keep watch over them. But as for you, do not stand there. Pursue your enemies and attack them in the rear. Do not allow them to enter their cities, for Yahweh your God has given them into your hand. Friends, you just need to know that the end is near. Yeshua will return and things are going to get crazy. When they get crazy, I want you to know that, do I want you to be adequately prepared? I do, but not all of you are going to have the money to build a bunker 20 feet under the ground. Hey, set aside some provisions. You might want to learn to grow some food or know people who do. But here's what I know in all of that. Yeshua is the Lord of it all. He loves you. He is your commander. Your job is to not lean on your own understanding. Instead, in all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will take care of your path. This is what we are about here. Now, in Thessalonians, I want you to see how Paul handles the same situation, chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. Now, I ask you, brothers, is the Apostle Paul counseling people who are basically getting freaked out about the second coming? And he's like, you have every reason to be freaked out because it ain't going to happen. Now, let me ask you, brothers, with regard to the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ, or Messiah Yeshua, and our gathering together to him, that you not be quickly shaken in your mind or be alarmed, whether by a spirit or by a word or a letter as if from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Look, there's a lot more going on there. I don't want to get into all that, but I just want you to see the disposition. The disposition, by and large, of the Lord's people is be ready, adequately prepared, be in community, but don't freak out. Okay? Chill. Say it again. He can build a bunker. Well, we might hey, still don't freak out, but you still might have a bunker to go to. Let's put it that way. Here's what I hear a lot. If you have sent me this video, I'm not talking about you. The video is generic for video. The videos tell me who the horns are, who the little horn is, and what is all going to come to pass. And it usually is accompanied by dramatic music. And when the dramatic music happens, it's my cue to like, is this supposed to get my heart to think a certain way? Because I'd rather just what's in the scriptures, what's logical, what makes sense. So I don't need the dramatic music. One of the things I had to learn as a PhD student is don't italicize everything. Let the force of the sentence and what's the content of what you're writing just be enough. The moment you italicize is you are grabbing to make something more forceful. The same is true with dramatic music. So whatever videos you're all watching, sure, send them to me. I want to keep in the know. I do want to know. I understand all of the Noahide stuff. I get all of it. I understand the laws that are passed. I get all of it. I've seen it. But here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to freak out. I'm going to show up Shabbat after Shabbat, and I'm going to feel the joy of the Lord. I am going to be in love. I'm going to tell people about the King of Kings. And I'm just going to smile a lot because I can't win the battle anyway. So I'm going to ask that you help me to continue to send me the videos, to continue to be alerted, to continue to make connections in how things work in the nefarious world that is, because it is nefarious. I mean, if you want to tell me about the Bilderberg group, don't that I haven't studied and don't already know. I know. I know about the Grove. I know. I've seen it. I've read it. I've read Skull and Bones. I get it. I'm not completely out to lunch here, but let me just tell you something that in all of that, I've come down to this thing that's just, I'm just a kid who fell in love with the Messiah, that realizes that this nefarious world is way bigger than me. And I've resigned myself to this one thing, and that is I will walk in your ways and I will help others do the same. And that is the result of my life, and that is it. Verse 3, let no one in any way deceive you, for it does not come unless the apostasy comes first, and it will come. It's gonna come. Look, this congregation, if you want to be pre-trib, great. I want to be too. I'm just not, but I want to be. Okay. I hope you're right. In fact, I'll really be listening to your argument. But that's not who I am, and you don't have to be what I am in order to be here. But come hell or high water, it's appropriate to say here that unless the apostasy comes first and the man of lawlessness is revealed, maybe Adonai, Melech, what is his name? What's that bro's name? What's that guy's? Zedek, the false Lord of righteousness, the son of destruction, who will be put to destruction by our Messiah, who opposes and exalts himself above every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes the seat in the sanctuary of God, exhibiting himself as being God. That is going to happen, and that thing is going to be very, very powerful. And just might be able to shut off your finances like that. I don't know. What's my counsel to you? Smile, trust, and obey. And let Abba send the hailstones as Abba sees fit. Verse 20. Now it happened that when Joshua and the sons of Israel had finished striking them with a very great slaughter, Yeshua will strike them with a very great slaughter until they're completely destroyed, and the survivors, those of whom survived, had entered the fortified cities, that all the people returned to the camp to Joshua at Makedah in peace, in shalom. I think that's the Hebrew word there. I want someone can look that up for me. No one so much as lifted his tongue against any of the sons of Israel. No one will lift their tongue against you either. And then Joshua said, open the mouth of the cave and bring these 5 kings out to me from the cave. Do you know that his national policy, if you want to take care of Russia right now, I mean, doesn't logic just say, just take out Putin? But we have a national policy that you don't take out other kings. You know why the policy's there? In the event that they get the upper hand on you, I don't want you to take me out either. So there's this kind of informal written, it's not, it might be written, I don't even know, but it's an informal agreement that the wars are fought with the people, not with the leadership. So Joshua militarily could have allowed these kings to go free. But does he do that? He does not do that. In other words, I'm sending you a clear signal. I am not scared of the rest of your cronies that are going to try to take me out. Yeshua is not scared of any evil or principality that will try to take him out. Verse 23, and they did so and brought the 5 kings out to him from the cave. Our king was put in a cave, but he came out victorious. These kings are put in a cave, but they're going to meet their end. 5 kings came out from the cave: the king of Jerusalem, the false king, the anti-Messiah, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. Now it happened that when they brought these kings out to Joshua, that Joshua called for all the men of Israel and said to the chiefs of the men of war who had gone with him, "Come near, put your feet on the necks of these kings." So they came near and put their feet on their necks. I don't know exactly what the analog is for us, but spiritually, when you are with your Messiah, there'll be some trampling. I don't know what it's going to look like, but you're a part of the cloud of witnesses, that you're a part of the right team. Let's put it that way for now. Verse 25, Joshua then said to them, "Do not fear or be dismayed." Here's the phrase again: be strong and courageous. For thus Yahweh will do to all your enemies with whom you fight. So afterward, Joshua struck them and put them to death, and he hanged them on 5 trees. Here's a picture. You should have been hung on a tree, but you were not. You were the rebellious son. I think it's Deuteronomy. I want to say, no, that's Numbers. I want to say it's Numbers 15, maybe? I can't remember off the top of my head. But the rebellious son, what's to happen to a rebellious son? That's right. Stoned. And it does say, anyone who's like rebellious like that gets hung on a tree. But who stepped into your place? Messiah Yeshua stepped into your place. He was hung on a tree. Now what's going to happen is all the kings that come against Yeshua, they're going to meet the same fate. But because of their rebelliousness, they will not have anyone step in. They're hung on 5 trees, and they hung on the trees until evening. Now it happened at sunset that Joshua gave a command, and they took them down from the trees and threw them down into the cave where they had hidden themselves. They were put back into death. And they put large stones over the mouth of the cave to this very day. Now Joshua captured Makkedah for English speakers, I guess, on this day and struck it and its king with the edge of the sword. He devoted it to destruction. What has Joshua been commanded to do with Jericho? Ai, devote it to destruction. And every person who was in it, he left no survivor. Thus he did to the king of Makkedah, just as he had done to the king of Jericho. Just as he had done to the king of Jericho. So that first battle that was won entirely by our Messiah, the high priest, is the same God that is going to take care of everything else. Now, I don't know what the millennial kingdom looks like, but what I can tell you is that his bride, or us in the millennial kingdom, not sure how it works, but we will be with him under his kingship. And will I be told to put my feet on their necks? Maybe metaphorically, I'm not sure. But here's what we know. I'm not going to read all the rest of the verses, but it's just in succession. Now, I'm not good enough to know all this, but I do know that essentially, let's just say this is the Jordan River, and here we are in Moab. And then we learned that a couple spies went in to the people of Jericho, and Rahab, she did a little bit of deception and said, hey, here's what I want you to do. I'm going to hide you up on the roof. And they came back and she puts that scarlet cord. Then Joshua takes all his people. Yahweh miraculously opens up that uh, the river, the Jordan River, and they go across. And here they are in the promised land. And the first thing they take out is kind of right in the middle of the promised land, Jericho, and then they take Ai after that. And it's kind of in the middle. Right now in the story, none of the northern kings are taken out. Now there's all the southern kings. And kind of in the annals of people who write stuff like this down, that's what's going to happen here, is it's going to talk about all the southern kingdoms that are now taken out by Joshua and the people. Up north is Shiloh. Up north, oh, I forgot I put that up there. But up north, up above, I didn't put it, but up north is Shiloh. Up north a bit there is Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. So they were up there briefly. Maybe they were already taking it spiritually before they went and cleaned house down south. I don't know. But I also know that in the end times, there's kings to the north or something to the north. And I haven't put all that together yet, or I would talk to you about it. I'm sure some of you got it figured out. Tell me afterwards. But then maybe they go up to the north, and maybe as I study moving forward in the book, as we go up to the north, Shiloh again is going to be established because that's where Yahweh chooses to put his name. So I'm not really sure how that works yet. But I don't know. Maybe it's a temporary situation until the end of the seventh day when the new heaven and new earth and the new Jerusalem comes down. I don't know. Speculating. But you can read all that and notice that there's no survivor, no survivor. I got it all highlighted. If you go down in your Bible, here's all the conquests, no survivor, no survivor, no survivor. Here's kind of what I'm thinking. Part of what God does in his three-dimensional, like, boy, there's a lot of carnage here. And here's what Yahweh wants to do. Whole world, I need you to see how serious this is. Because when I return and I take my kingdom, there will be no survivors. It will be absolute. I would much rather you read this story and get it figured out now. Because when I come back and I am the real Joshua and I take the land, there will be no one surviving, and everything that is evil, demonic, will be devoted to destruction. And in that regard, we got to look at this and go, what a gift. And it's not, again, there's no innocent people that are put to death. These are people that are putting people to death, acting heinously. So it's not like God is unjust. Anyone could turn from their wicked ways and follow Yeshua, follow the God of Israel. But what a gift to us to have this, because it's serious. The very last verse, 43. You can go all the way down to the bottom, verse 43. So Joshua and all Israel with him returned to the camp at Gilgal. You can see there in chapter 11, Joshua takes the whole land. The southern is taken care of, and now we're going to go north. Felt like I was a good pounding today. I didn't mean it to be that way. It's just, we're in war. And sometimes war is rough. Idolatry is rough to talk about. I'd just rather tell you the truth. And we just, can we still be friends? Is that okay? Okay, I'm doing my best here. Let's pray.